soif. Tu bois sans dire à tout.
What is going on, jerk faces? It's your boy Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's a conversation you could be having during the day, but having at night. Yes, we are one short tonight. Robert got a call and letting him know that he would have to come in tomorrow because a couple of people called in sick. So usually he would have tonight off, but since he has to go and work early tomorrow, he's not joining us. So it's just gonna be me for tonight. I hope you're happy with it, but of course you're happy because this is my show. So with all that said, let's get this conversation started. I guess just a brief belated Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. To start off the night, I guess I'll go over what I did for Mother's Day for my own mother. And it was, we didn't do anything too big. Me and my sisters, we all collaborated and made my mother dinner. Well, I shouldn't say that all of my, all of us siblings, because one of my sisters, didn't do too much. I mean, she helped, but I'd be hard pressed to say that she, contributed that much to the labor in producing the dinner. But me and my sisters, we made pan roasted mushrooms, oven baked asparagus, and I was responsible for the steaks. And the steaks I made for Mother's Day were ribeye steaks. In my preferred method of preparation was reverse sear. And for those of you who don't know what reverse sear is you basically prepare the steak as if you're gonna cook it on a frying pan or a grill. The way I do it is I oil it up with just maybe like a tablespoon of olive oil all around, and then a mixture of sea salt and Himalayan pink salt. So you get a little bit of flavor, and it's interesting because I came upon this mixture by happenstance because I was making a steak dinner for a friend of mine, and I wasn't working within my kitchen. I was working in his kitchen, and I asked him what kind of salt he added, and he said he had sea salt and he had Himalayan pink salt, and I was like, oh, that's So I prepared. I've made steaks before with sea salt or rock salt or just ordinary table salt, but I never had the good fortune to have both kinds of salts. So I took those two and I combined it, and I really liked how it came out. You get the distinct sea saltiness, and you get kind of a more earthy saltiness from the Himalayan pink salt. And so I did a little mixture, and I coated both sides of the steak, and you put it into an oven at a relatively low temperature, and you cook through. But I remember the first time I tried this reverse seared method, and it didn't turn out that great. Because at a oven at a relatively low heat, it takes much longer to cook food. So what I did was I did the America's Test Kitchen method, and they advise, if you're going to do a reverse sear at home, you want to cook the steak at 180 degrees. And so I did 180 degrees, and then I cooked it for about 30 minutes. And then I then to preheat the oven as high as it can go, like at really high at 500 degrees. I did 525 and it still worked out. But every oven is different. So please if you try this at home, then please be aware that the temperature that I set it for, or how Test Kitchen advises to do it. If you don't know the characteristics of the characteristics or temperament of your oven, your home oven, then I definitely would. What is it? I definitely do a few tests first. Maybe sticking up a pan of water in there to see and then using a thermometer to gauge. Uh, but yes, for me, setting it at 525 initially, like the preheating stage, uh, and then reducing it, and then after it's preheated to 525, reducing it the temperature to 275, and then putting the steaks on a rack. And this is important. Make sure you get a baking sheet and a rack, so it does so the steaks aren't sitting on top of the surface of the pan, but it gets up, and so it gets that air circulated around all the way around the steak. So if you do that, you leave it in for an hour, and you do this for an hour, and then you check the steaks. And I would recommend getting a meat thermometer. It is very useful. And so I stuck it in there, and then mine went the temperature went a little bit high to 150, and usually the target temperature for medium is, what is it, like 130 to 140. My steaks, they got up to 150, and I was a little afraid that there would be more on the well done side, but as I'll find out, it didn't harm it at all. So, anyways, after an hour, and after the steaks get to the proper temperature, you let them rest. Um, just so all the juices uh, can get reabsorbed back into the steak to make the steak even juicier. And you want to do that for about 10 minutes, usually tinted with some aluminum foil. I didn't do that. I just left them out for 15 minutes. But I probably, but in hindsight 2020, I should have tinted them. After I let them rest, the steaks are actually good to go, ready to eat as is. But they're not the most attractive looking steaks, just to be honest. And so and so so that's when you break out the cast iron to finish off the steaks and get that nice nice char, that crust that you get on a steak. And so I took out the cast iron, I heated it up, and then I laid the first steak down, and then I added a knob of butter, a clove or two of garlic, and a sprig of rosemary. And and then I proceeded to butter baste it. And at this point, you don't really need to have the steaks on for that long. Maybe 5 minutes at the most. So like two and a half minutes aside, because really you're just trying to get a really hard char on it to get that again get that good crust on it. And then as you do, you're slowly infusing garlic and rosemary flavor into the butter, and then you take the pan, you tilt it at at about a 20 to 30 degree angle, and then you take a spoon, and then you allow the butter to pool, on the bottom part, uh, the bottom part of the pan, and then you take your spoon, and then you begin to take spoonfuls and cover the steak with it over and over again. Just constantly get that butter up on there, and you have one mighty tasty steak. And yeah, and after I did all of that, when we cut into the steak, it was the perfect pink, like perfect medium pink, and it was so very satisfying. I was so satisfied with myself. I took a little video of it, um, and yeah, I was very excited that it had worked because my parents being kind of old schoolers, especially with steak, they kind of have an aversion to medium because every time like they got it, they got the they're just afraid of the blood. You know, um, back in Korea, they didn't really they didn't grow up eating steak, and so they think when they see red, it's blood. But actually, if I try to explain this to my parents, but it's actually not blood. I think it's the heme part of the blood, but it's not like whole blood. And or wait, I might be wrong about that. Don't hold me to that. But yeah, but I think slowly but surely I've been getting my parents more comfortable with medium steak, and so because I remember one time my dad, I think I forget what occasion it was for, but I made steaks again, and and my dad complained that it was too pink inside, so so I made his more well done, and then he was eating his steak and say, oh, it's so chewy, and it's taking forever, and then he sees me eating my steak and I'm having no problem, and it's like all tender, and I'm like and I'm just enjoying myself uh, eating the steak. And so my dad takes a bite of mine, and he practically eats he practically eats the rest of my steak. And so that was when I kind of got my dad to start enjoying medium steak. And yeah, that was my Mother's Day. That was what me and my siblings did for Mother's Day. And also my sister, she made like this cake that my mom really really likes. It's not like your typical cake. It's made from lady fingers and a cream cheese icing, and there's like fruit. I'll admit it's really good. And my mom is always finding a reason for my mom or my sister to make it. Uh, and I think even my dad, he's asked my sister to make it for him, but not necessarily for him, but for like one of his hobby groups that he's a part of. I think it was his guitar lessons. Um, so that was yeah. So that was my Mother's Day for my mother. Um, yeah, it was a good time, and you know, um, so and I hope your Mother's Days were just as memorable and entertaining and not filled with family drama. Um, yeah, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm sweating over here because today here in lovely Los Angeles, it got a little bit on the warm side. I think it broke 80 degrees today. So and me, my aversion to heat. Um, I don't know if are able to hear, but I do have the fan running right now, and so trying my best to keep cool. And of course, you just saw me take a sip of my soda, so yeah, just trying to keep cool. It's hard. It's hard, right? It's hard. especially after this weird weather we've been having. It's kind of it's like kind of cold and cloudy, and then all of a sudden it gets really warm. Um, Although it has it hasn't broken any records though. I remember I think I saw on the news during the weather that one year like back in the 90s at this around this time was like 92 or 93 degrees, which is to say out of the ordinary. But I think it's I think I'm hoping that because of the slow warm up that we seem to be going through, because I mean it's already May and it's still relatively cool. I'm hoping that means we're gonna have a milder summer than what we are have been accustomed to lately. Like triple digit heats, like after the sun has gone down and all that kind of stuff. So here's hoping. Here's hoping. All right. Uh, let's get on with the news of the day, and let's start off with a follow up to last week, and that is Representative Brian Sims. For those of you unaware, Brian Sims is a state representative within Pennsylvania, specifically one of the districts in Philadelphia. And a couple of weeks ago, he live streamed an interaction that he had with a few pro life proponents. One, I think, one being the most famous was him, confronting this elderly woman who was praying and trying to you know gra- you know trying to grab girls and give them pamphlets to crisis pregnancy centers, alternatives. And Brian Sims gets in this old woman's face and it's like and just proceeds to shame her. It's like, oh, how dare you try to shame these women for just exercising their constitutional rights. And just he goes on with it for about 8 minutes, and it's hilarious because the irony is, like, because he's so tone deaf, he doesn't see the irony of the situation. He is shaming a woman, an elderly woman, exercising her constitutional right, and accusing her of shaming people for supposedly exercising their constitutional rights. Because there is a gray area in terms of, is abortion constitutional? And I'm someone who doesn't think that abortion falls under a protected right. But the Supreme Court ruled that that it was, or that the Constitution does cover it. The constitutional protections do protect it. So for now, I will abide. Um, but here's a woman who's exercising her first speech and her First Amendment rights, which are not only freedom of speech, but peaceable assembly, right to religious expression. The First Amendment covers a lot of different, a bunch of different things. It's not just freedom of speech. I think it's just colloquially understood to be that amendment, but it's also freedom of association, freedom of press, freedom of petition to rectify or remedy wrongs committed against an individual. If you ever had people come up to you and ask to sign a petition, that's covered under the First Amendment. So he harasses this old lady, and is a little bit racist about it too, because he kept mentioning the skin color of the woman, which as white, and say, oh, look at this old white woman shaming people, and and then he was like saying like, oh, we white people, we have so much to make up for, and it's like, you know, why are you carrying so much guilt? Why, like, you who have never, you know, who have never owned a slave, never held, a whip, as an overseer, why do you carry so much guilt? You didn't do anything wrong, So why are you carrying the baggage of slavery, um, or the supposed crimes of white people? Why are you carrying all that on your shoulder, bro? It's you don't need to, because you had nothing to do with it. It's kind of like with the Japanese, like the Japanese that bombed Pearl Harbor. It's like the Japanese cats that are alive now, like they had nothing to do with that. They weren't the ones in the planes in the zeros, dropping bombs and shooting at defenseless sailors and what have you. Like, so it's like no no sweat off no sweat off my back. I mean, similarly, with like the whole uh, Korean occupation, the Korean occupation by the Japanese, when their use of comfort women. Um, yeah, no Japanese man, alive today was responsible for that. So I shouldn't hold them responsible. Although there are some really hardcore Korean people who will not let go of their resentment or hatred of the Japanese, to the point that they won't even buy Japanese-made products, or like cars, electronics, what have you. Um, so yeah, and then also Brian Sims. There's another. Again, he live. It's the most ridiculous thing. He live streamed these things. He basically is incriminating himself. Of course, he'll never face any sort of any kind of justice in that going standing before a judge. Um, but yeah, there was a group of three teenagers. I think they're like ranging from 13 to 15, and he offered $100 for those girls' personal information, like their address, where they went to school or whatever. And again, he's like fixated on this idea of race. He's like, oh, look at these white people, look at this. And then it was hilarious because there was this one, I think Hispanic girl. I don't know. I really couldn't tell, but she was basically saying, "How am I white?" And she was, clearly not white, as in Anglo, and so it was kind of absurd, and and um, and so again, he literally called for the doxing of these children, and and yet he still has his Twitter account. Jack Dorsey calling out on you. Um, but for the follow up, that was I understand that was a lot of setup for the follow up. But anyway, the follow up to this is that he has received some backlash from this. I think from both sides, maybe a little bit more from the pro life side. Um, at first, he just kind of doubled down, and it's like, oh, you racist bigots, you misogynists, you know, everything on the script. And then at a certain point, Abby Johnson, this pro life activist, the movie Unplanned, which was based on the book written by Abby Johnson, or like it's like her memoirs. Um, she gets in the fray and it's like, hey, Brian, I'm gonna be at that Planned Parenthood, and we're gonna hold a rally. And if you want to come and have a conversation, I'll be waiting. And so yeah, and then I hear that the rally was a tremendous success, a huge turnout, a lot of pro life people, from the average, uh, from like your average street demonstrator to big name pundits like Abby Johnson and Matt Walsh of Daily Wire. And interestingly enough, I think I think they had like 13 speakers, and out of the 13 speakers, there was only one man to speak, and that was Matt Walsh. And so, the left is constantly saying like how the people on the right are misogynist, and they're trying to put women down, and they're kind of control their bodies. Like, well, we just had a rally, where not, like 98% of the speakers were women. It's just like like one man spoke, and the rest were all women. But of course, you're gonna discount them because they're women who don't whose beliefs don't align with yours. And so then you kind of go into that no true Scotsman fallacy. Um, but anyways, again, Brian Sims didn't show up, and then he puts out this really lackluster apology, and it wasn't even an apology to the old woman he was harassing or the young girls that um, he was legitimately calling harm to be done onto them, because he's again asking for personal information. He made an apology video to Planned Parenthood and saying like, "Oh, I know you have a non-engagement policy, and I'm sorry, for violating that. I was just being a concerned neighbor, and you know, uh, and I know I can do better. You deserve better. Blah 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 blah." And I was just like, it's like, motherfucker, you were harassing an old, defenseless woman, and you were calling for the doxing of children. You weren't being a neighbor, or at least you weren't being a neighbor to everyone. Um, just before I started, I was thinking about this, and just like the nature of being a representative, a councilman, or a council person, uh, you know, congressperson, a senator, a president. I was just thinking about it, and it's you're not only representing the people who voted for you or whose beliefs and outlooks that you align with. When you are elected, you have to represent everyone, even the people that didn't vote for you, even the people that whose beliefs don't align with yours. You have to. I mean, you have to have some. You have to provide some sort of compromise. It's like, hey, I know I'm not the person that you wanted, but let me show you that I can, also. Oh, sorry. That I can also be a representative for you. And I think you know, we very much have lost that quality of ourselves, where we can just, where we can disagree, but we understand that we are both, trying to get to the same place. Um, so I think for politicians, uh, I think you have to, you really have to realize that you're not just representing the people that voted for you or your beliefs align. You have to represent everybody, and that's everyone in your district. Whether they have an R, register as an R or a D or whatever. You have to represent them. You have to, because it's not like you only, you then you start representing only pockets of people. That isn't what that's not what the job entails. You have to represent everyone within that district. You have to represent everyone from that state. You have to represent everyone in that country. Um, but that's just a little digression um, about that. But back to Brian Sims. Um, yeah, so he made that non-apology video, and then he immediately turned his Twitter account to private, and he wouldn't see anyone that came to his office, to his political headquarters office in Philadelphia, and he actually had police, kind of shoo people away or not confirm that that was his office, and so so Brian is making bitch moves. So if you really are, if you really think that you're right, then why don't you just engage people? Yeah, I don't understand. If you think you're right, or if you know you are right, or correct, then why not just engage and break down their arguments? Break down their arguments. Why is why is abortion good? Why is abortion beneficial? How does abortion ensure a woman's autonomy? These are just questions that I might ask them. Um, uh, what is the societal benefit of abortion? Why not? Why do you only advocate for abortion and not? Uh, Here's another little thought that I had. When people say they have like this binary of either pro-choice or pro-life. I don't think the pro-life is an accurate enough label. I think pro-life is more pro-choices than the pro-choice side, because pro-choice is only advocating for one choice, and that's abortion. Whereas I think pro-lifers advocate, for more choices. One being abstinence, the other contraception, condoms, birth control, what have you, parenthood, and adoption. It's just I think pro choices individuals um, just don't want to complete the hand. You know, they don't want to complete that hand, and that's all they're asking. And I think there needs to be more dialogue. And I think if people came to the table, with good faith, I think more constructive, more constructive conversation could be had, more progress can be made. Because I don't remember what the exact number was, but I think a lot of pro-choice people, they, a lot of pro-choice people aren't pro-baby murder, so that, they're not pro-late-term abortion. They want, uh, they would, I think a lot of, middle of the road pro-choice people are just looking for an early point in the pregnancy to which to abort, and that I can understand completely. But they just have to decide on a point, where pro-life people, they cite the moment of conception, right? That's the point at which they're like, it's a life, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's a life, full stop. Nothing. You will not do anything else from that point on. And before pro-choice people were, maybe, they were at 20 to 24 weeks. But at least that was, a line that they are willing to, that was at least a definitive point. But now they're all the way up until birth, or even, going by Ralph Northam, the Virginia governor, is like, post birth. After, if you guys ever saw the radio interview that he gave, or that he, as the governor, does, I think every month or week. He's like, oh well, we'll give birth to the baby. We'll even resuscitate the baby, and then we'll, put the baby. We'll make sure the baby's comfortable, and then me and like the mother and the doctor will have a discussion. And it's like, ugh, it's like one of those things that just makes your skin crawl. And I guess, yeah. Yeah, this leads into kind of this is good. I guess this is a good transition point for the next topic, which is the heartbeat bill. And previously I was talking about uh, the line. And I think pro-life people have come to that kind of, what is it, that compromise, where Georgia being one of the first to adopt this heartbeat bill, where it's like, as soon as the fetus has a heart, as soon as the fetal heartbeat is detected, that's the point where you can no longer have abortions. From that point on, and at least that's at least a starting point. That I think that's a pretty decent concession made by people on the pro-life side. And I don't honestly can't think. I honestly can't see why anyone would object to this. Um, you know. The constant refrain from people on the pro-choice side is, oh, it's just a clump of cells. It's a clump of cells. It's a clump of cells. It's a clump of cells. Well, if it has a heartbeat, it can no longer be merely a clump of cells. It has to, it has to be a very complex, you know it has to be a complex organism then, because isn't that if you watch any like medical procedural type of show, it always has that one scene where the person in surgery or in the ER or what have you is their heart it flatlines. All right, it goes beep, and then they spring into action, and they inject epinephrine, and they get the defibrillator paddles, and they go clear, and the body convulses, and this still the it goes beep, and then they hit him again. It's like doosh. You know, it's like beep, and they hit him one more time, and then they hit him one more time with the juice, and then boop, 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 boop. You know, it's which indicates that they're alive, alive. So why is it that we don't apply that same logic to a baby? I mean, I think that's perfectly reasonable. You know, if a heartbeat signifies life, then why not we then you know acknowledge that that the thing growing inside of the woman is alive and is an individual being. It's not as though the heart belongs to the mother. It's not the mother's heart. It's the baby's heart. So why not use that as a jumping off point? Why not use that? Why not use that as a base point? All right. And I'm not saying that I 100% agree with or I'm on board, but it's not something that is like I like. It's something that I will abide, because the alternative of full term 40-week babies being killed is something that I can't abide by. And so if you want to have an abortion, you have to have it before the fetal heartbeat can be detected. And that's one of the counterpoints to that is that, oh well, it happens so quickly that most people don't even find out that they're pregnant until after that point. And so it's just like, well, then maybe perhaps you should exercise a little bit more responsibility, right? Because again, I think the fetal heartbeat is detectable at 6 weeks, and again, a lot of women don't find out that they're pregnant until uh, a bit or a ways after that point, after that 6 weeks. Um, and the response has been, well, especially on the Hollywood left, has been really disgusting. It's really disgusting. I just saw a headline where it said J.J. Abrams and Jordan Peele, they're working on some new project, uh, and it's set to be shot, or the production is to be in Georgia. And just to backtrack a little bit, there was initial call for a boycott of Georgia because of this bill from Hollywood celebs. But what is it? J.J. Abrams and Jordan Peele's new project. They're going to go ahead and produce the show out there, but they said that all the profits that they make from the show are going to be used to fight the heartbeat bill. And I don't know about you, but that's some petty ass shit. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm as petty as the next man, maybe even more so. But how can you be against this? How can you be against the preservation of human life? The baby is completely innocent in this, and yet you are condemning it to death. It'd be just the same as if you were sitting at home, just on your couch, just watching TV, and all of a sudden the cops come in and said you're under arrest for X reason, right? And then they don't even do a bad show trial, and they just convict you of said crime, and then they execute you. That I think we would say that that's not fair, that that's not justice. So why would we do this to a completely innocent being who had no say in their creation? But we would still sentence them to death. I think really, I would ask you guys to think long and hard about this. Really wrestle with this idea, with this notion that's being proposed right now. That is law. In at least one state, New York, or but it doesn't even seem like laws even matter because uh, there are states, even though there's no law for it. People are still getting late term abortions, and so you know I don't it really boggles my mind, and just leaves me speechless to think that people could kill an innocent baby, an innocent being who again had no say in their conception, and yet are still receiving the death penalty for it. I know, guys. It's a pretty. I'm trying to make this as light as possible. You know, it's a little bit easier when you have someone to bounce off of, or work off of, or work against. Um, but I'm trying to do my best to make this, and hopefully this next story will do it. Kind of continuing in that line of Hollywood calling for a boycott of the state of Georgia. Um, kind of washed up has been actress Alyssa Milano, and as well as Bette Midler have called for a sex strike over this heartbeat bill. And in a Twitter in a tweet, she basically saying like, oh, women, let's stop having sex until women get their bodily autonomy or reproductive rights back. And it's kind of funny because Melissa Milano is advocating for abstinence, which has been, again, one of the pro-life positions since forever, right? I mean, if you follow the logic trail, it's like she's saying stop having sex until we can get a law repealed, which would kill babies. It's like, well, if you're not having sex, then you're decreasing your the chances of an unwanted pregnancy. So, mazel tov. But I mean, honestly, is that not the definition of irony? Is that not the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of irony? Here's a woman who claims that you know men are or sexist men are trying to take women's body autonomy away from them, or their reproductive rights away from them, and now she to get back at supposedly conservative men. they're gonna hold back on. They're gonna hold out on sex until that they get the right to kill babies again, whenever they want. Some of you might say like, oh, what about danger to the mother for health reasons, or rape or incest. And I'll say, you could say those things, but statistically, those are only 1% of the reasons women put down, if at all, um, as the reason for their abortion. The very vast majority, like 90%, 90% plus, all cite what is it? Or 90% plus just use it as a form of birth control. Birth control after the fact. And I'm not saying that rape or incest aren't horrible things. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that statistically, that the form that that the women sign or fill in at Planned Parenthood, it says like reason for abortion. The box that they check off is just because, not because of rape or incest. And again, I'm not saying that those cases don't exist, but I'm just saying that let's not make a mountain out of a molehill. Catch my meaning? Let's not take the extreme example and make that the norm. And let's not make it the rule for everything. It's like, oh, because that there is such a thing as rape babies or incest babies, we should be able to kill all babies. That's not what I'm saying at all. But that's what Alyssa Milano is saying, and Bette Midler. But I mean, Bette Midler's so old. Who the hell wants to step her? I don't know. I haven't seen a picture of her in a long while. So she still could be hot. I don't know, but she's pushing like probably 70. Um, and also, isn't it weird that as a form of retribution that they're withholding sex? I thought like the whole thing about the feminist movement was that they were trying to avoid harmful stereotypes of women, and I do believe being upset at a man and withholding sex as punishment is a harmful feminist stereotype, or at least harmful stereotype of women. So, Alyssa Milano, I commend you for your pro-life stance, and I encourage it 100%. Oh man! Oh my God! The world that we live in is sometimes too much. I mean, you have you have you have men shaming women on behalf of other women. You have people who want to kill babies for no reason. I mean, okay, not no reason, but not very good reasons. And you have a celebrity calling, who's basically taking a pro-life position and saying abstinence until we get what we want. Well, I mean, like, it's the abstinence part that I'm focusing on, and not so much until they get the right, they get the right to murder children. But yeah, I mean, she's basically calling for abstinence. Yeah, abstinence, great. Yeah, that means it will lower the chances of having an unwanted pregnancy. I'm for it. Bravo to you, Alyssa Milano. Bravo. Um, yeah, the world is just weird. I sometimes I just can't get over how bizarre uh, and bizarro world upside down. The upside down that we're in. I mean, just okay, and okay, just quickly. There's these two guys at uh, Chapel Hill University in North Carolina, and they put up pretty graphic images of aborted babies around the campus, and they were confronted by this woman. And there's a video of it. She simply asked, "It's like, oh, he's like, did you put these up? It's like, is this you? Is this you?" And then the guys were just like, "Yeah, that was us." And she immediately begins to swing at one of the guys, and starts kicking and just keep kicking and punching him to the point that they call the police, and she doesn't get hauled off in cuffs. No. Because why would she? Because let's do the old gender switch, and if it was a guy who was doing this, he would for sure have been carted off in handcuffs. But because she was a woman, they arrested her by citation, which is like they don't like the police even say like, oh, we're not gonna slap cuffs on her and take her away. We're just gonna give her the citation, and she still has to show up to court and blah 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 blah. But it's like the viciousness of the attack is like if it was a man who did this, for sure they would have actually arrested it, not like this pussy citation arrest by citation crap. But anyways, what I want to address is this woman's reaction. This woman's reaction, I think, speaks volumes about her personal past and her personal experience with abortion. Because she sees the images, and I'm pretty sure she herself had an abortion. I mean, just going off of the reaction that this woman had, she just like went in hard and like started swinging and kicking and just wasn't letting up. And I think it was because she probably had to justify having an abortion. And she probably has to convince herself every single day that what she did was the right thing, and that it was just a clump of cells. It didn't feel anything. Um, but I think when confronted with the harsh and grotesque realities of abortion, it just made her lose it, and she couldn't keep it together. She wasn't able to, she lost all her chill, and so. I think people know it in their souls that abortion is wrong, and what they're doing is committing murder, but they just so want to desperately believe that they're not. That every day that this woman has to get up and lie to herself and tell her that she did nothing wrong, even though in the pit of her heart and soul, she knows better. She knows better, and she knows what she did. And I hope that one day that she would ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness. Uh, hope she asks for forgiveness from God, which I know she'll get, 100%. And from a community of believers, near her. So I know that they will, offer her I know that they will forgive her, because it is mandated, by Christ Himself to forgive. So I really hope that that woman gets help. I mean, if you saw the video, you would just see like the guilt, in the guilt in this woman's voice, actions, her self-loathing that she murdered her child. It was all there, and I hope she gets peace of mind. I really do, and I hope that one day, that she's, and I hope I sincerely hope she seeks forgiveness. You know, whether or not she forgives herself, I don't know. You know, I don't know how anyone could forgive themselves, but I hope for this woman, I hope she finds peace. All right, that was the last story for tonight. I hope you were entertained. I hope you were informed. I hope you walk away from this with a different perspective. And that's all that I ask. I really hope you did enjoy that. Enjoy this episode. Please show me some love by giving this a thumbs up or leaving a comment. Don't forget to follow. Don't forget to check out the library of other shows we have. We have the Circle of Jerks podcast. The newest episode just debuted this past Monday and we have a special guest, Eric Nam of Nam Fam Bam, and we discuss whether or not Chinatown is a better movie than The Godfather. To find out what our thoughts are, be sure to check out the episode. Don't forget to check out episodes of this show, Nocturnal Transmissions, and don't forget to and if you're into gaming, specifically the 80s, like Nintendo 8-bit graphic games, then don't forget to check out Robert's show, Up by Up Down, all conveniently categorized for you in the playlists. So do check out that. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts: Twitter at PodcastCOJ and Instagram at Circle of Jerks Podcast. And that'll do it for us tonight. I hope you'll join us next week, and I hope you have a good night. And don't do anything I would.